Okay. So, okay. So, how much do you know about cloud computing? It's a well-known terminology nowadays. Can you start with that? What do you understand by cloud computing? Why we should go for cloud-based service? And in which cases we should not go for cloud-based service? Any idea? Okay. First, I will tell you that please try to interact. It's the class should not be one way. If it is being a class like just a one way class, then it will be better that in short time we can record a class and share the video with you. So a classroom teaching should not be like a YouTube or any online training which is being performed by the recorded videos. Okay, so be interactive. I will expect your responses. Okay, otherwise you can go through YouTube videos and other videos, lots of tutorials are available, then there will be no such difference. Okay, okay, as it's a first class, I'll start with the basic concepts. um, what do we understand by cloud computing and how it was evolved? So if we say that in case of cloud computing, uh, let us try to understand. Initially in 60s or 70s year back, we have the concept of only a machine which can calculate something. Later on, a desktop versions came to the market. So where these are the standalone machines where we can perform some task which will take long time by a human being, but it can be performed in short time by a machine. So these are the standalone systems. Later on, it was changed. Network was formed. So you have already learned network topologies and protocols. So you know that how two machines can interact. We have different protocols in different layers, and we have different types of topologies, though we will discuss some topologies which are used in data center, which is nothing but the backbone of the cloud infrastructure. So we'll come to that scenario. We'll discuss VL2, Factory, Bcube, this type of network topologies which are used nowadays in most of the data centers like Amazon, Google, and other cloud service providers. So the backbone cloud computing is not a new topic. It was evolved from last few decades. So if we talk about cloud computing, basically it's nothing but a distributed computing environment. Only the difference is instead of having the resources in our own infrastructure, we are acquiring the resource, we are getting the resources from the third party resource pool on rented basis. So the concept came to the market in 2007 approximately. Uh, the concept is we can get these services in different forms. So we have different types of services like platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, even software as a service. So there are different service models. So based on our requirement, we can choose which type of services we will prefer here. So before that, let us try to understand how it works. So if we have two machines, say I have one computer here And I have another computer here. In network programming lab, you have actually done some communication between these two machines. So two machines can interact over network. So if they are connected through a switch or a router or some other networking devices, even if they are directly connected by a cable configuration will be different. So if we directly connect two machines, we know that two machines can interact. Okay, so if two machines are interacting with each other, then we may consider that it's a distributed application, or if we run an application in this way, it's a distributed application. In network lab, you have written one type of code, which is basically a client code, which will run in client machine, and you have written some code for server, which is running in a server machine. But probably you have tested it into different desktops or laptops, which are connected over network. So this type of communication is client server communication. Like a very well-known program you have written, it's a TCP echo program, or TCP or UDP timestamp program. So if it's a TCP echo program, basically we are trying to understand that whether these two machines are able to communicate with each other. So a client will send a hello message. Now, if this client sends this hello message to server, now server, after getting this message, say the server is responding with a message hi. So this type of architecture is basically client server architecture. Okay, so where a client is communicating with a server. Now, if you have written the server code, probably you have written it. So you have written the server code in multiple threads using the concept of threading, which you have learned in operating system. You have written the code for multiple thread. So if we have multiple thread, basically multiple client can communicate with this server. So if we say that this one is client 1 and this one is client 2. So in Network Lab, you have also written this program where from a client machine, we can communicate with the same server. Now, each and every, so if client 2 sends a message like another message, say the message text is hello 2. If this message is being sent by client 2, then server will send a response like hi. And if the message is something different, so I'm assuming that the message is hi 2. Just to distinguish that two clients are communicating with the same server. So one server application or program is running in server machine or in a machine, and multiple clients can communicate with this server. So we have written the program using multiple thread in server side, and in client side, it's a single threaded application. So this type of communication you have already tested in your lab. Okay, so if we have this type of architecture, it's a client server architecture. Now, this type of architecture is working for web application. If we are developing an application for our college website, the web application is hosted in a web server. Now, from browsers, from client machine, you can access the service over internet. There are many more examples where we have this client server communication. Now, the problem is, if we think that for a server, we have written an application which is being accessed by thousands of users simultaneously, then probably the server will not be able to give service to that number of users simultaneously, because the resources of that server is limited. Okay, for a web application for your college, which can be deployed in a single server, which will be accessed over internet by hundreds of users simultaneously. So all of you are not logged into your web application or college website simultaneously, or at max 1,000 or 2,000 users are connected at a time, but not more than that. So there is no such problem. But the problem arises if an application is being accessed by thousands of users or millions of users. Then it's not possible to give this service by a single server to all the clients, like a banking application. Okay. So if we consider a banking application like State Bank, so at 10 a.m., from each and every counter of every branch, employees are logged into that system. Now you can assume that how many users are logged into that server simultaneously. Even I'm accessing the service from my mobile, you are accessing the same service from your desktop. Okay. So basically, millions of users are connected simultaneously. So we know that resources are limited. If we develop and deploy this application in a server, resources are limited. So having the limited resource, this kind of service cannot be provided. So even if we think that the application is multi-threaded application and which is designed for a server where multiple cores can perform simultaneously. So if we develop an application for a banking system or any other system where we have, just for example, I'm assuming that I have an application which is developed for a website and mobile app. So is for State Bank, we have designed an application which is running in this machine. So in this machine, when it is running, so millions of users are connected. Now, if the application is running on 16 GB and 32 core processor system. Okay. So, and each and every core is approximately 2.2 gigahertz. Okay. So we can calculate that 2.2 gigahertz, so 32 into 2.2 gigahertz, if we are utilizing it with 100%, so maximum this number of CPU cycles can be generated. So if it's 2.2 into 32 gigahertz, so you can multiply it. That is the maximum number of CPU cycles that can be executed. Now, in computer organization and computer architecture lab, you have learned, even in microprocessor, you have learned that if we have some operation, like I should write it in uppercase. So if we have an add instruction, so for add instruction, we have different types of add instruction. Now for every instruction, how many CPU cycles are needed? So you can easily calculate that using this server maximum with 100% utilization, which is not possible in reality, with 100% utilization, maximum how many users can get this service. So this server will not be able to give service to millions of users simultaneously. The system will hang. So it will crash. So what we have to do? But nowadays, this type of applications are running. So instead of developing the application for a single server, later on, a new concept was coined into the market. And that is basically a multiple tier architecture. So you have learned N-tier architecture. Okay. So when we are using multiple, then basically clients are communicating. So if these are the clients, so these clients are communicating with this server. So the program which is deployed for this server, now this program is being divided into multiple sub modules. So users are connecting to this server. So here we can run one application which is being used for this interaction with the user. Now some part of this application is being deployed in a different machine. Okay, and next it is communicating with the database server. Okay, so if we think that there is a database server for banking application, obviously this one is needed. Now we have business tier, where here we are developing or deploying web application, and here we are deploying web app in web server, and we are deploying business logic in application server. Okay, so if we think about it, then users are communicating with the web server. Now, instead of performing the whole task by the web server itself, it is communicating with application server. Now, the application server is performing something and it is communicating with the server. So this type of n-tier architecture or multi-tier architecture was introduced. But still, this n-tier architecture is not capable to give service for this large application like SBI. Okay, so multi-tier architecture is generally used where 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 users are connected simultaneously, but not with the number of users having 1 million or 1 lakh or more than that. In those cases, we have to think in different way. So the new terminology came into the market, that is basically the cluster computing. Okay, so this is a distributed application. So this is, we can just mention that it's a just a minute, sorry. Hello sir. Hmm. Hmm. হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ। হুম, হুম, না সেটা হবে না এখানে। কাকুর কাছে তো নেই। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে। So this is a simple distributed application having n-tier architecture. Now the problem is it is unable or not capable to give services to large number of users. So a new architecture was involved. It was known as cluster computing. Cluster computing. Can you understand my writing? Hello. Hello. Am I connected?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's very hard to understand this handwriting. I'm not practiced enough with this device, so it will be hard, but try to understand. If you are unable to understand any word, please ask me again. Okay, so the concept of cluster computing is, it's based on the similar concept of n-tier architecture, but the concept is the users are connected to a front node or a system. So users are connected here. Now instead of performing the task by this server, this server is dividing the task into multiple other servers. Okay, just for example, I can give you one example, but though it's not actually used, but previously the architecture was similar. If we consider any search engine, so requests are being forwarded. When you are submitting the request is being forwarded to a machine, which is front node. Now, the front node is responsible only for dividing the task to other machines. So it will not perform any task by himself. So it will, instead of performing the task by itself, it will just redirect the task to another machine. That machine will perform the task, it will generate the result, and it will return to the front node. And finally, the response will be redirected to the client. So here the clients are here, and this machine or this server is known as cluster controller. Cluster controller. So this is the cluster controller, and these machines are known as node controller. Okay, so these are the node controllers. So these are the node controllers. So the task will not be executed by the cluster controller. Cluster controller is only responsible for dividing the task among the node controllers. So previously, the whole application is running in distributed, conventional distributed architecture. The whole application is running here. Everything is being performed by these three machines, or in some cases, there can be more than three machines. But in cluster computing concept, hundreds or thousands of node controllers are connected to a cluster controller. Okay, so we are forming a cluster of servers. Now this cluster of servers, that is this one, now this cluster of servers are responsible for providing the service to the end users. So for this clients, this cluster is providing the service. Okay, so how this cluster will be formed, we'll discuss the network structure, we'll discuss how a cluster can be formed. So what are the examples of cluster? Like in State Bank application, in this application we have a cluster of database. So in earlier cases, in this simple distributed application, we have talked about that there is a single database server where, say, MySQL or Oracle is running in this database server. So this database server is responsible for providing the service for each and every user. But again, the resources are limited for the database server. So we need a cluster of database servers. So it will be a MySQL cluster, or it will be an Oracle cluster. So we can configure this application as a cluster. So for enterprise application, it will be a cluster of database server. It will be a cluster of application server. Okay, so everyone will communicate with this. Okay, now an web application can be divided into a cluster. An application server can be divided into a cluster like this. So basically, more than 3 or 4 machines are being connected to provide service to the end users. So if we can accommodate all the servers together who can perform synchronously or asynchronously, they can be configured in such a way that users' requests will be performed, or the user's task will be executed in node controllers, and cluster controller will be responsible for providing the routing. So it will just receive a request from client one. It will decide that which controller, node controller is idle or it's free, or it will decide that which node controller is underloaded. To that node controller, it will redirect the request. It's something like in your classroom, you have class representative. So if I give a task that you have to copy, I have a note, and this note contains, so it consists of 50 pages. So if I give it to one person or one of your batchmate, then for copying one note, if it takes 5 minutes, then for 50 pages, it will take 50 into 5 minutes. Now, if I can say that your CR is responsible for dividing the task among you, so I will give him 50 pages. Instead of assigning the task to one student or one batchmate, it will be divided among 50 students. They will copy the content and the response will be returned. So theoretically, 5 minutes is required to copy the whole content by 50 students, but actually it will be 6 minutes, because after receiving the content, now the CR will accommodate it and the result will be returned to me. So this is the advantage. The concept is same. The concepts of computing or computer science is not new. These are being derived from your real life. So it is being provided in this way. So the task is not being performed by a single machine. Now the task is being divided by cluster controller to node controllers. Node controllers are performing the task independently and they are returning the result to cluster controller. And finally, cluster controller will accommodate it and return the results to clients. So this is the advantage of cluster computing. Now, again, later on, another issue was there are different types of clusters. I'm not talking about the storage cluster or computing cluster, and there are different things are there. So we don't have the scope to discuss here. We need to understand what is actually happening in the background, and we will have a basic concept, so basic understanding. So if you are interested to understand how cluster computing works, what are the different forms of cluster, then we need additional classes. So beyond this classroom, we have to discuss it. So we can schedule a class in different time beyond the class hours or scheduled classes. So we can discuss over there. Okay. Now, later on, so this cluster computing or this concept was uh, it was adopted during the time when you have learned there are some sonnet or this type of network. At that time it was developed. So at that time, generally a collaboration is being done between two universities. So generally in one university or in one college, we have hundreds of computers. So we can form a cluster taking those machines and we can give service. Now, so if we have a huge computational task till now, just outside of this technical discussion, just you have written some program earlier. In every semester, you have laboratory classes, so you have written some program. So when you have compiled a code, how much time it requires? It's a millisecond or fraction of second. The code which is being developed by you, generally in laboratory, but personally, if you have done something, then it may take some more time. So generally, it takes fraction of second. But in industry, if we want to run a program which is being used to analyze some data set, it may take 1 month to generate the output. Okay. Sometimes even to compile a program in my when I was in industry, in my project, when I have compiled a program, it took approximately 2 days to compile the program. After that, we can test that whether it's working properly or the added functionalities are not affecting other existing functionalities. So it will take huge time. It's not a student application. We are not talking about any student application or student's code. So in real time, in your real life application, it may take few months to run a program. So we need huge infrastructure. So if we have such kind of application, we have written such kind of application. So if it is being executed in our machine, so instead of deploying it in one computer or one server, I will prefer to accommodate all the computers of our laboratories together, and I will create a cluster, and I will I will execute the task on that cluster, so it will take less time. Now, during that time, when one cluster is being set up in one lab, at that time it's possible. There is no such problem. So a cluster is efficient technique by which we can perform it. Now the problem arises later on. The problem is, if we have multiple lab, as you have seen in our college, that we have multiple lab having different types of resources. Like in C programming lab, we have some computers having similar type of resources, but in advanced Java lab or in object-oriented programming lab, the machine's configurations are different. In cluster computing, one constraint is the resources are to be homogeneous. So if we want to create a cluster having 30 machines of a lab, then this 30 machines configuration should be similar. It may happen that in one machine RAM is 4 GB, in another machine RAM is 6 GB or 8 GB. There is no problem, but the problem is if just a minute. Okay. If the problem is, if we have two machines different architecture, like in one machine it's Windows 32-bit, in another machine it's Linux or Windows 64-bit. So if the architectures are different, then we can't create a cluster having different types of resources. So a cluster needs to be formed where the systems are homogeneous. If it's a CentOS 7 64-bit architecture, then all the machines having this or within the same cluster should be of similar configuration. Okay, so this is the constraint of cluster computing. So later on, we need some new techniques or technologies by which the problem can be resolved. So during 90s, a new technology was coined, and the term is basically grid computing. Okay, so the concept is grid computing. Just a minute. Here I can write. Okay, the concept is grid computing. You probably were thinking that why we are talking about these terminologies, but these things are related. I can assure you that within next class you will understand that these things are very, very related. Without having this knowledge, we will not be able to start cloud computing. Okay. Sorry, just a minute. Hello, sir. Hmm? স্যার আমি একটু ক্লাসে আছি, আমি 1:30টার সময় আমি আপনাকে দিচ্ছি। আচ্ছা। Sorry for this interruption. So new technology is basically grid computing. So the advantage of grid computing is we are introducing a new layer on top of cluster computing. So we have multiple clusters in different lab we have configured. I'm assuming that we have configured it. So we have one cluster in CSE lab 1, we have one cluster in CSE lab 2, CSE this. So we have multiple clusters. Okay, so everyone is basically, these are the networks, so we have multiple clusters. Now this grid computing helps us to install a new layer or new software module on top of this. So this is basically it will run in a different machine, which is grid controller. Okay, so the responsibility of grid controller is interacting with different cluster controller accordingly. So we can integrate multiple cluster environments using a grid environment. So as a whole, it will be known as grid environment or grid computing. Now, another advantage of grid computing is it can be set up over the internet. So if I think that in our college we have 5 laboratories, now we have formed 5 clusters in different each and every laboratories, and those resources are being integrated with the resources of, say, it's MSIT. So in MSIT there are 6 or 7 laboratories. So if we integrate this resource, so we can integrate the resources over the internet. So even they can be geographically dispersed. They can be geographically distributed. So we can integrate the resource over the internet. So grid computing environment helps us to integrate different types of clusters which are co-located or they are geographically distributed. So they can be integrated. One well-known example of this one is probably you have heard of CERN Grid, the Big Bang project, where hundreds of universities and research institutes are collaborated. So the Big Bang project is basically a project which is built on grid computing. So where the resources like from India, Shaha Institute is a part of that. In Germany, most of the universities are basically in collaboration with this project. In India, probably 7 to 10 number of institutes are in collaboration. So these institutes are geographically distributed, but actually in the project area, the sensor is in project area, the sensors are capturing the data. If the sensors are capturing those data is not being stored in a single server. Instead of that, those data is being sent to different servers or different clusters in different universities. Okay, so when this data is being sent to those servers, now in every server some computation is being performed. They are analyzing the data, and finally the result is being sent to the central unit. Now central unit is responsible for merging those data and finally obtaining some result. So in this experiment, more than hundreds of clusters are involved. Okay, so this is the advantage of grid computing. But as probably you have not noticed that this type of grid environments are being set up in academic institute. This type of environments are not being accepted by industry. This is the major problem of grid computing. At that time, internet was not so common. People never thought, they have probably predicted, but at that time the scenario was not like that everyone will be able to uh, get internet connection in their home. So they can set up their infrastructure, they can integrate it in this way. But the problem is one thing was overlooked, that is the pricing model. Academic institutes can share their data, they can share their research works free of cost, but industry will never accept it. So if TCS has a cluster in their infrastructure, they will not integrate it with the cluster of Cognizant or IBM until there is a pricing model. So pricing model was not introduced in grid controller, and grid controller, the development of environment was something different, where different research institutes have solved their problems in different way. That's why the overall architecture of the grid computing is very complex. So it's very hard to manage. According to my experience, we have set up a grid environment in 2008 during my master's degree, and we have taken more than 1 month to set up a grid environment having only 30 machines. So you can understand how challenging it is. So it's a very hard to configure the grid environment because the errors are not common. If an exception is being thrown, no one knows that why this exception is being generated, because the codes are written by thousands of researchers and no one is maintaining proper documentation, as you are familiar with. So when you are writing any program in lab, you are not writing anything within the code. You are just you are not writing anything, means you are not writing any documentation. You have just written your code, you have compiled it and tested it. If it works fine, then fine. But if I want to change this code, I will not understand why you have used this variable and why it is being used. So the problem arises in academia. So this type of problem was a major issue in grid environment, and it was not accepted by industry as pricing model is not there. So from during 2006, 2007, this cloud computing evolved. So what is the basic difference between cloud computing and grid environment? The concept is same. In cloud computing, the backbone infrastructure is nothing but the clusters. Only the grid controller was reformed. So according to the requirement by the industries and users, because in 2006, 2007, internet is very common. Probably we don't have internet in our mobile phone with high speed, but internet is very common. So during that time, a new marketing challenge was evolved, and the challenge is we need some resource which is not purchased, but if I can get this resource from someone, then it will be easier for me. Like at this scenario, if we assume that cloud computing is not there, I want to format my laptop. Okay, so I want to format my laptop, but I don't have any back. So I may ask you that do you have any external device, external storage device? So if you say that I have a secondary storage device having 512 GB space, so I have to go to your home, I have to collect it. After bringing it, now I will connect it with my laptop, I will take backup of the data, and finally I will format my machine. Okay, but it's a time consuming. But if someone gives me similar type of storage, uh, like, so what are the options here? Either I have to purchase it or I have to collect it from somewhere. But do you think that if in your batch you are friends, okay, so you can give your secondary storage to your friend to format. But if someone who is not known to you, if someone asks that do you want to give your hard disk, you will not agree, you will just deny. Okay, so in business or in industry, it is not being accepted. So if some servers are deployed in TCS, the resources, even if the resources are idle, TCS will not give these servers to Cognizant or IBM. Okay, and same thing for vice versa. So resources are not being shared in this way. But if the there is a pricing model. Like if there is a model where it is being mentioned that if you want to get this amount of resource for this time, you have to pay me this amount. Now they will. So that is the basic concept behind the cluster computing. So if I need to format my system, I can acquire it over net. So I will just go for rent. So I will upload it in Amazon S3 or Google Storage or in some other service providers infrastructure. I will just take my data backup to that server for 1 day or few hours. I will format my machine. I will download it, and that's all. That's the advantage. So now you're probably familiar with Python. So you have some computational tasks. So you have a huge volume of data set which needs to be analyzed. So you are trying to perform some machine learning on it. So if you want to perform some learning, if the data set size is very high or very large, then probably you need to run this application on a large system configuration or on multiple systems for a certain time. You are not going to, will you purchase 10 servers to run your program? So you will not choose this option. So this is not a good choice that you to run one program for 1 day, you will purchase 10 servers, which may cost 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs. So instead of that, you can go to Amazon, you can go to any other service providers infrastructure, you can run your program within few hours. If the result is being generated, just terminate the machines and you will be charged only for those machines and for the specific duration. If it is being used for 10 hours, billing will be done based on 10 hours. Okay, so this is the background of cloud computing. That is the reason, that's why cloud computing is so popular today. Nowadays, we have different forms of cloud computing, and most of the things are not included in your syllabus, but few basic concepts are there. So we'll discuss the basic cloud computing from the next class. So I expect that you have lots of doubts, but you are still silent. Do you have any query? Please, we need a discussion. Should not be one way. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
So you don't have any query, or you can't understand anything? Shall I discuss it in different way? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Why silent? Okay, if you have any query, you can call me. Okay, if you want to sit in different time beyond these class hours, you can inform me, then I'll talk to you. So we can meet over this Google Meet for a certain time. There is no issue. So be interactive. Otherwise, I will not be able to understand that is there any issue or not. So if you are unable to understand anything, then I should know, so I can take the classes in that way. Okay. So, okay, fine. So I will end this session if you don't have any query. So you can drop me message personally or in group. I'm unable to send you any message till now because I'm not admin of that group. So, okay, so you have my number, I think, and you can use my official email ID. My official email ID is this. I'm writing it in uppercase. @tict.edu.in. Okay, fine. So that's it for today. Okay, from the next class, I have some doubt about your schedule, class schedule. Probably the schedule will be, the issues will be resolved today. So I will inform you in this MS Team. I will schedule it earlier, little bit earlier, so that you will be notified. Okay. Okay. Bye.